Hey everybody, today I want to share something new. I'm working on a bar for my personal Necromunda board, and I want to have some vehicles parked out front. What kind of vehicles belong in the Underhive? Motorcycles! So I'm converting my Goliath Gang bikes to go from vehicles to terrain on demand. The trouble is that the rider's hands are molded into the handlebars. To fix this, I'm making my own handlebars with some green stuff, some blue stuff, UV resin, and a Green Stuff World roll maker. So let's get into it. I've already made the imprint in my blue stuff by heating it up and pressing the handlebars into the material. The next step is to fill the impression left by the part with something that will harden to create a copy of the piece. I'm going to be using UV resin for this. It should only need to be cured with my UV flashlight for about a minute, but you can also use sunlight to do the job. When curing UV resin, it's always good to poke at it with something just to make sure it's fully cured, or in my case, mostly cured. I want the resin to still be a little bit soft so that I can slice through it. I'm going to cut off the handles from the handlebars, and then we're going to replace them in the next step. After checking the resin has firmed up, it's time to remove it from the mold. Now, with the piece removed from the mold, there might be some flashing or extra material around the edges that you don't want. I'm going to use a scalpel blade to clean these up. Remember, with a piece of terrain, we're only going to see the top of it 95% of the time, so it's perfectly alright to have some flaws on the sides and bottom, because most people will never see that. Finally, when I was happy with how the resin piece looked, I carefully cut off the handles to remove the driver's hands. Water is used to keep the green stuff from sticking, so I wet my blade before I cut a small section to start making some textured handles. It's important to remove the center section where the colors touch because sometimes it starts to activate and that will create chunky bits in the mix. Mix the two halves together and keep your fingers wet to make sure that it doesn't stick to you. When the yellow and blue have fully mixed, you should have a nice deep green. This is only my second time using the roll maker, but keeping it wet is key. The other secret of using it is to size the thickness of the roll you would like to make before trying to put the texture into it. I did this by using the flat backside of the roller. This also helps to make sure that it's the right width to fit inside the textured area. The roll doesn't need much pressure applied in order for the texture to transfer. A single pass from the top to the bottom worked best. This means that the thickness of the roll stays close to the same as before texturing it. This allows for various size rolls, cables, and wires to be created and then textured. The plates act to guide each other, but they don't set the thickness of the roll. As I was creating a few rolls with this batch of green stuff, I textured a few of different thicknesses and bent them into different shapes, which may come in handy for future projects. I made sure to leave one relatively straight to act as my handlebars. Finally, in order to keep the rolls from sticking to my mat, I applied water to them in the hope that it would stay wet until the green stuff firmed up. Parchment paper would be wise if you plan to roll lots of these at once. After waiting overnight to make sure that the green stuff was fully firmed up, it's time to cut out our new handles for the motorbike. Since I made a practice piece before I started recording this little guide, I sized the new roll against the one I used previously. Next, with a pair of tweezers, I hold the small piece in place for gluing. These pieces won't work with plastic cement, so super glue is our best option. Thankfully, a little activator will make sure that the glue dries with our piece in just the right place. To make sure that both grips are the same size, I measured the roll against the first handle before cutting it. Then it was easy enough to repeat the process of gluing it in place on our resin copy of the handlebars. Finally, our handlebar grips are in place and the piece is ready to be magnetized. Nah, just kidding, I'm not going that hard on this conversion. Instead, I'm going to pull out a little bit of sticky tack and just poke the part in place. It worked for the prototype and should be easy enough to remove if I ever decide to convert these back into playable motorcycles.